Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is class number 18 in the discourse Shlach Lecha Anashim 5672. This is the fifth discourse in the great discourse B'Shah Shehekdimu, and we are in the second class in chapter 20. So we began in last class, which, as we said, this whole chapter is a parenthesis, and it's trying to connect the primary discussion of the book, of the Maimer, to the particular parsha in which the Rebbe said it, which was Parsha Shalach. So in the last class, in class number 17, we discussed that Torah in general is called man, and because it's the Or Pnimi, it's the internal light. And as we are learning over here in the discourse the entire time, that the internal light is considered internal even from its quintessential beginning. In other words, even when the internal light is still embedded in the Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum, it has already the tiny little, it has little notes, if we might say, just notes of Pnimi, because the Esa Spheres Agnuzos, the 10 Spheres, the hidden Spheres, are already considered present in the Or Ein Sof, at least on this level of Or Ein Sof, since the Or Ein Sof is beginning, so to speak, to think about delivering its light or revealing itself to worlds, and that already creates a slight modification. It creates already a slight design of 10 spheres through which that revelation is going to take place. And however, as we learned, that those 10 spheres are not in a state of existence. They're still melted into the Or Ein Sof, so, into the infinite light. So they exist and they don't exist. And this is parallel to the idea that we learned in last class, that the human, the Adam, which is the human, which represents lights in vessels, which represents Or Pnimi, just like a human being, his soul goes into vessels. We're only called human, by the way. We're only called Adam when our soul goes into a body. Then the soul and the body is called Adam. And the same above. When is God called Adam? God is also called Adam when the lights go into the containers, into the body. Obviously, the body over there are the spheroids that are called gufim. They're called the body for the Or Ein Sof. However, just like we're learning that we can trace even the lights before they go into vessels are already destined to go into the vessels, even at the very, very, very beginning. But over there, they exist already with slight design, but yet their design is so subtle that they all can exist together. So, and again, they exist and they don't exist. So to the Adam, we said, the man contains within himself what's called Kiloi Adam, that Hashem is not man. So the man itself has the not man in it. Last week, I said this on my own. He doesn't say it in the Maimer, but it implies from that we find an Adam on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol, who is a human, who would go into a place where it says, you can't be human. No human should be there. Because when he would go in, he would transcend his Adam, and he would go to his quintessential start and his beginning, where his features are not featured. The features are in a non-descriptive manner. That's the idea. And the Adam Elyon also rises on Yom Kippur up into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, into the Holy of Holies, into its state where it can be refurbished and completely renewed, because it's not fixed. In that state, it's not fixed. It's still in a state of Lo Adam. Now, just like we used man for this idea, the Or Pnimi is called man. Now, again, he says Torah is Or Pnimi, because Torah is the whole idea of Torah versus mitzvahs. Another important idea that we were learning on the Thursday in the last class, it was a Friday class actually, that the Torah is called Zaisa Torah Adam. Torah is called Adam. So in Torah itself, there is the Adam side of Torah, where the Torah becomes fixed lights and vessels. And on that level, the Torah is very comprehensible. And then there is the Torah, where the Torah is still in a state where its definitions are hardly sensed, and therefore they're not graspable. And it's, as we're going to see, related to the secrets of the Torah. It's like he spoke of the Torah being called Adam, and these ideas in vessels, but yet the origins of Adam is in a state of Loy Adam, where the lights are not yet really in vessels. In the same idea, he also mentions regarding the geographic location in which the Adam lives. In other words, an Adam has to be has an environment where the Adam lives. So God created the planet Earth, which is inhabitable for people. Other planets are not possible for, or other stars and places up there out of space. They're not. They're not meant. They're not meant for life. It can't support life, as long as at least as far as we know now of other planets that whatever we don't know yet, or I think at least I don't know of any other planets that are suitable at least for humans to really live there. So. So parallel to the Adam is also the land, the earth, which also parallels the human in these levels. The Adam of the Adam, the man of the man, which means the vesseled element of the person, settles into the part of the earth that is Eires Bekalim, lights and vessels. And what is that? That's civilization. And that's really what civilization means. Cities, towns, villages, countries. I mean, mainly not the country, I'm saying the places, the cities mainly, where people live. So what does that mean? Think about it. The Adam, the human being, creates for himself homes, buildings, a support system. In other words, containers to facilitate life. And in a sense, on those places in which we create cities, it means that we have a grasp on the land. We're able to grasp the land and turn it into a city. It's not completely random. There are certain places that you can't build a city. Why? Because the land is so wild, the land is so uninhabitable that a city doesn't work. That's usually the wilderness, and definitely some extreme remote areas in wilderness that humans could not conquer and turn it into a city. So the city represents the place where the Adam can live, and the idea behind it is also Oiros Bekalim, lights and vessels. In this case, the human would be the light, and the city and the town and the village and all this, that the support system is kind of the vessel to facilitate the person. So you have a matching element of what he calls it in the Maayon Yishuv. On the other extreme, there is the element of the Loy Adam, where a man cannot live, and that's the wilderness, especially the remote wilderness. And in that area, we say there's a pasuk that says, "Eretz asher lo yeshev Adam sham." It's a land where man does not live. That means it's not facilitatable. I don't know if I'm making up a word here. Okay, it cannot facilitate, it can't hold, doesn't allow for humans to live. That means the humans cannot get a grasp on that land. So is that not related to humans? Of course it is related to humans, because it says Va'aretz nasa. I'm just making up a few ideas which are coming to my head as I'm learning, but it fits very nicely in this concept. So I'm not sticking to the actual words over here, but it says Va'aretz nasa l'bnei Adam. God gives the entire planet Earth to man. However, the Loy Adam inside of us is what connects to the wilderness. And that's why you have, like you say, who lives in the wilderness? Fugitives, people that are nishta mensch, person who's not a person. They go out and they live in the far, and they're hiding in the wilderness. And maybe when we sometimes travel to these remote wilderness places to get away from civilization, maybe it's because we want to top our Loy Adam. We need to refurbish, we need to replenish, we need a Yom Kippur moment. We need a moment that we transcend the boundaries and limitations that keep it. So we like run away into this loy adam experience when we go into the mountainous areas, into the wilderness areas, into the remote areas. And it is a refresher. It's an elevation in a sense into the loy adam world, into the world beyond Adam. In Torah, this represents the levels of Torah that are not its Torah, and it's actually the most highest levels of Torah, but we can't really civilize it. We can't grasp it. We can't take it into vessels. But in between the two, there is as we learned on Friday, there is a medium. There is a middle ground. And what's the middle ground? That's the farmland, the suburbs of the cities, the fields, the farms, which all of that is although it's not really fully built up, but it's not populated like the cities. It's far more sparse, and people live spread out. And it's primarily bought, however, it's these farms and these fields that support the city. So that's between the Adam and the Loy Adam. In a sense, he doesn't say it here specifically, but perhaps we can connect that there is the Adam inside of us, the man inside of us is the Or Pnimi, the internal light. But we know that we have two levels of Makifim. There's a Makif HaKarev, there's a close Makif, and there's a Makif HaRachik, a distant Makif. Makif means encompassing lights. So there is a Makif that is close to the person. In sometimes that's referred to our human body, that's the vessels, right? But we wear clothing. Clothing goes around us. It doesn't. It's a makif, but the clothing hugs us very closely. Clothing are tailored to the person's size, which means although it's not internalized, so it's an encompassing dimension, but it still hugs us and wraps itself around the person's body itself. But then there is a more distant makif, called makif harachok, a more distant makif, which corresponds to the level of a house. A house versus clothing. A house is not each person its own size. To a house, for example, many people come together in one home. Our person makes an event, invites everybody into his home. People of all sizes, big, tall, and people of all preferences can all go into one house, because the house is also an encompassing energy, but a more distant. It's not so modified, if you might say. It's not modified at all to the vessels, to the narrow vessels of the human body. So just like it is, everything exists on many planes, just like it is in terms of the human body itself, the body, the clothing, the home. Same as also in terms of human civilization of Earth. There is the parts of the Earth that are fully Oires Bekalim, those are the cities. There is the encompassing, the suburb areas, the farmlands and the fields, which they are support for the city. They're like the clothing for the city. And then there is the wilderness, the areas that are completely not civilized, that's the more distant makif. So he's going to explain how in Torah we also find these levels. There is the Torah that's called the Or Pnimi itself, when it goes into vessels. Now, and remember one point. Again, this always have to remember this. Torah is in essence an Or Pnimi. So all levels of Torah relate to Adam. However, as we said earlier, the Adam contains within himself the Loy Adam, the non-Adam. That's why in Torah itself there is a Yishuv, and that's the part of the Torah that is understandable, digestible. Definitely the Mishnah, the Talmud, and all the responsa. I mean, these are hard, they're complicated, but anybody can take them, and if you apply your mind, you can study. And obviously, some people more brighter than others and have sharper minds, but everybody really can study and get to know the Torah. But that's the Torah as the Torah comes into containers and in vessels, which the Torah speaks about phenomenon and ideas and subject matter that we have a relationship to. so we can understand it. And then there are the more distant elements of Torah. And that's more the secrets of Torah. And in that itself, there are two levels, as he's going to explain. There are secrets of Torah that are closer to us, and then there are secrets of Torah that are further than us. He calls it, there is Razin, there are secrets, which would then correspond to the field and the farm. And then there is Razin, Dirazin, the secrets of the secrets that are not even possible to be revealed. Now, this highest level of Torah called the secrets of secrets, that higher, more transcendental level of Torah, that's called wilderness. And that level corresponds to the Esses Spherais Hagnuzais. Because when we said earlier, what are the Esses Spherais Hagnuzais? It's already the beginning of our Pnimi. In that sense, we would say it's part of planet Earth. It's not a Mars. It's not a distant place that's totally uninhabitable, where humans are not meant to set foot on. No, it's part of planet Earth where God gives it to human. So the Or Pnimi is meant to be revealed to us. However, this is a level of the Or Pnimi where it's still utterly undefinable. And therefore it's not yet inhabitable. And that's the Esses Spherais Hagnuzais Bimatzilon. And that's the level of Torah that's called Midbar. Okay, so that's kind of a summary we were learning on Friday. The Iker we're holding by the word V'yeshleim. Let's just go back a line. He's saying he begins with the top up. He's going in Torah. He's going to start with the Midbar. He's going to go to the Sada, the field, and then he's going to go to Yishuv, into civilization. These are the secrets and the hidden elements of the Torah. They're beyond grasp. So it's like the part of the territory of Earth that we just can't get a grasp on and we can't civilize it. The Iker, and primarily, is B'chineraz and Didiraz and Shebetayra. They are the secrets of the Torah. Shesasum v'nelam lagamri, that are utterly and completely hidden. K'moshekasam and Makamachar, as stated elsewhere. Umemela, and therefore it comes out from that. B'chinezu, in this level, ein bezeh tainug. There's no pleasure. Which means one of the most important elements when we study Torah is that we ought to have pleasure. Judaism, people think, is meant, a lot of people have this idea that it kind of shuts your pleasure down, because it doesn't really recommend, finding pleasure in worldly material things, especially if you get to start learning Hasidism. It's not found of. We know that partaking in physical pleasures, unless they're completely within divine intention, is not really supported. And obviously there are so many pleasures in life that are forbidden, but even the permissible ones. And to indulge in it coarsens a human being and distances one's heart from God. So we would think that, therefore, that means we're supposed to live a pleasureless life. But nothing could be farther than the truth. Judaism wants us to have immense pleasure. And the connection, but the pleasure should be the real pleasure. And that's the pleasure of God. How do you have holy pleasure in God? Primarily, it's the experience of Torah. Torah is meant to be enormously pleasurable. And there were once people who thought that because when we learn Torah, we're supposed to learn it because it's God's Torah, that means that we're supposed to try to avoid having pleasure in learning. So there was a great Hasidic master, his name is the Avnei Nezer, Rabbi Avram of Sachachov, a son-in-law of Rabbi Nachum Mendel of Kotsk, one of the great geniuses of Torah in the 1800s. And he writes that it's actually an integral part of Torah that you're supposed to have pleasure when you learn Torah. And actually it's consistent with Hasidus as well. Of course, the primary reason we learn Torah is because we know it's godly Torah. And it's not just to satisfy our human need for intellectual stimulation. However, once we have the basis, which is the connection and the basis, I'm studying because we realize that this is God's wisdom and we're learning it to connect to God, then actually Torah is meant to bring in the deepest pleasure of the soul. However, we know that there's those elements of Torah that because they're so digestible, they're so understandable, it can fill us with tremendous delight and pleasure. And then the more distant elements of Torah, and especially the secrets of such a high, deep level, are not tasteable. So it's too deep and too far off, and therefore it doesn't stimulate pleasure. And that's what he's saying over here. So the reason why you don't feel the pleasure in it is not because it's not pleasurable, but because it's so lofty and it's so distant that we don't have any grasp in it. And therefore in this, because pleasure comes from the understanding of something. His galus, this expression in Chassidus, his galus atik, the revelation of atik is pleasure, bebina is in bina. That means that until you don't understand something, you don't have pleasure in it. If you hear a new concept, if you're learning something, and the teacher is so excited, and you can see the teacher is kvelling in the pleasure, but you just don't get what he or she is saying, it causes immense pain, because you realize there's something pleasurable, and you can't eat it, you can't taste it, right? So, and even when the idea initially flashes in a person's mind, it's like a tinge of pleasure, but you don't really get the full pleasure until you sink your teeth into it, and you really, really can absorb it and take it into your bina. Bina means into your vessels, into your containers. Then you have the revelation of the pleasure. But on this level of secrets of the secrets, and he says, "Memeilan, therefore, b'pchenezu ein bezet tainuk," doesn't have pleasure. The Isgalus Atik, he says right over here, Isgalus Atik, because the revelation of Atik, which is the innermost of the crown, which is the place where pleasure comes from, who bebina is in bina b'hasaga and understanding. So that is this level of Torah. So the secrets of Torah that are beyond the entire capability of understanding, they are so high, and therefore there's no pleasure. And it's like wilderness. The desert is not a place of pleasure. Nothing grows there even. You say, at least in a farm, you have all kinds of fruits. You can go strawberry picking. You can go apple picking. And you have pleasurable things. The city definitely affords all kinds of pleasurable. You have all the restaurants and all the other experiences that are meant to pleasure and bring the delights to human life. But the wilderness, it's empty, barren. But here's the interesting thing. At this level of the remote, distant, highest secrets. So here's the thing. The reason we don't have pleasure in them is not because they're not pleasurable. Actually, this is the most pleasurable because it is the Torah as it is the most godly and therefore the most intense, and it has the most life to it. It's infinitely more alive because it's infinitely more godly. It's Torah on a purely godly level. Its pleasure is infinite. But precisely because the pleasure is so infinite and so beyond our vessels, that we're not able to access it. However, in the days of Mashiach and after the resurrection, then we're going to experience that pleasure in a very, very sharp way. And this is the truth of P'chinas Tamei Torah, of what says is the reasons of Torah. It says that the reasons of the Torah, or the reasons of the mitzvahs, was not revealed. Tamei Torah, or a deeper, it doesn't say only the reasons of the mitzvahs. Tamei Torah means in Torah itself, simply it means the hidden secrets, the hidden reasons of Torah. But the more specifically, it means, we know that the Torah is given to us as words, like you'll read in the Chumash, there are words. And then in addition to the letters, the words and the letters, there are the what we call the tagin, which are the crowns on the letters. Because in the Torah you'll see that certain letters has crowns. And we know that the crowns are a loftier level than the letters itself. That's why we don't understand the crowns. But even beyond the crowns, but at least the crowns, you can see it. It's visible in the Torah. Then there is even a higher part in the Torah called the nekudot, which are the vowels, the pronunciations. So in a chumash, you can see them. But in the actual Torah scroll, these nekudot are not even seen. It's even a loftier level of Torah, a more godlier level of Torah. And then there is even higher than that, and that is the song of Torah. And those songs are called ta'amim. It's the musical notes that the Balkoreh follows when he reads Torah publicly. So that dimension of Torah is going to open up to us in the future. And that dimension of Torah is the Torah where the Torah is utterly godly and still, you know what that level is? That's the level of the Esses Spheros Hagnuzais. That's the level of the 10 Spheros of the Torah as they are still hidden in the Or Ein Sof. And that's going to be revealed, P'chinas Torah, she is Galula Asid, and are going to reveal itself in the future. B'chinas, in a level of tainug, of a pleasure, habilti morgash, in a level of pleasure that cannot be felt. What does that mean? When we have pleasure, the pleasures that we have, obviously pleasure is a very, very powerful experience. But our pleasures that we have is not the essence of pleasure. Because every pleasure that we experience is a pleasure that is mixed into something else. The most common of them, obviously, is food. So you have food. So food is nourishment. And yet God added into the food that's nourishing, he added a tinge of pleasure. And that's because food adds life to us. So there is life-giving features in the food. And that life is pleasurable. So there's little, we might say, what we call it, cells of life, molecules of life. And it's like a spice. It's like paprika that's put into something, right? It's the salt. It's whatever it is. It's the garnished. It's the element of pleasure that is mixed into the food. And then we have pleasure when we watch something that is really beautiful. When we watch something really beautiful. So there's the thing itself, and there's the pleasure that's in that experience. And then there's music, for instance. So we can listen to music, and the music evokes a tremendous delight and a pleasure in the soul, and so on and so forth. And then there is the pleasure in emotions. You read a book, and it stimulates emotions, and you have like a deep sensation and pleasure and a delight in this experience of your emotions. And even higher than that is the pleasure of intelligence, especially as we learned, holy intelligence, but any type of intelligence. When you study and you learn and you grasp things, it's very pleasurable. But again, over here, the pleasure and the thing are two different things. Can't we experience the experience of pleasure, just pleasure? So the essence of pleasure itself, because it is so undefined, it's not defined. See, when all these other pleasure are like little pieces of pleasure, but the ocean of pleasure itself that is not defined is rooted to life itself. Its life at its very essence is pleasure. And that's why we find, for example, that being alive is pleasurable. There is the pleasure of life. But we're not like in a state of kvelling, in a state every moment we're living that we sit there and we're like, I'm alive. But it has to be a very, 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 very powerful pleasure because we have such a strong will to live. We have such a strong desire to live. And we know that whatever we have pleasure in, that's what creates the desire to it. Why do we have a desire to study and to learn? I mean, other than it's a mitzvah, fine. But in general, the natural desire, instinctive desire to study and to learn is because we find pleasure in it. Why do we have pleasure? Why do we have desire to eat? Because we have a desire, and the more pleasure we find in our food, the more desire we have for eating. The pleasure to listen to music, the drive, whatever it is, all the pursuits that we have, which are driven by drive, the drive is driven by pleasure. What's the most powerful desire that we have? Is to be alive. The desire to live is the strongest desire. We see, sadly, we see the hostages coming out under the abnormal conditions that they lived. They only survived with their faith and their desire, that dead-bent desire to live. And that desire to live no matter what, where is it coming from? Because there is a pleasure to life. There is an infinite pleasure in life. It's just because it's so essential and it's so infinite and it doesn't have any parameters that it's built-in morgash. You can't fail it. You can't fail it. So when we say, imagine the experience of God's pleasure, of his infinite pleasure, So we can't feel it. The sense to say the pleasure of God that he doesn't feel in his vessels. That is just the essence of life. It's called the makar kol hatanugim, the source of all pleasures. Ein sof pleasure, the Torah as it exists in this Ein sof pleasurable place. And yet, that level of pleasure is going to be revealed to us in the time of Mashiach. And that's because when we study Torah, we're engaging with God. So, but now when we study Torah, we're engaging with God's mochen, where the Torah is Hashem's, what is coming down into Chachma, into God's wisdom, and we're engaging and interacting with the Torah as it's God's mochen. So we experience along with that the pleasure that goes into the mochen, that goes into the mind. But as Mashiach will come, and we're going to get deeper and deeper and deeper, God is going to open up to us, not just his mochen, not just his mind, but he's going to open up to us his levels of Ein Sof that are higher than the mochen, all the way into his pleasure. That's going to be revealed. That's the song of Torah. V'yil asid, and in the future it's going to be, and this is like so impossible. V'yil asid, and this level is going to be in the future. This is going to be in a grasping, which we grasp the substance of it. How can you grasp the ingraspable? It's impossible. And yet, he says it will be this way. Not just will we grasp about it, the information about it, we'll grasp the substance of it. Obviously, through the Torah that we learn now and the engagement in which we engage now with God, especially through the simple mitzvahs that we will soon see, we're grasping, we're touching on this essential pleasure, that tainug abilti murgash, that is not felt. Little indication of that dimension, of that level of Torah, where the Torah is one with God's essential, non-experienceable pleasure. The essence of all pleasure, we find in Chabad, there is a custom that on Shabbos, everybody eats 3 meals. In Chabad, we also eat 3 meals. Everybody's supposed to fulfill, because the mitzvah of eating 3 meals, the third meal, you don't have to halachically wash. You can fulfill the mitzvah by eating of fruits or something. So, of course, we have to do that. But in general, the custom of Chabad is not to wash the third meal. And the reason, as it's explained in Chassidus, the Rebbe Rashab explains elsewhere, because the first meals of Shabbos reflect the level of divine pleasure that is felt. Murgash, it's like the pleasure you feel in you eating food. So that which the pleasure is already mixed, like we said before, crumbs of pleasure that go into something. But when we reach the third meal, which is the highest level of Shabbos, that's already referring to the future, the time of Mashiach, the time of Tchias HaMesim, in which our pleasure is going to be, we're going to interact with the essence of pleasure, with the level of Bilti Murgash. And that's why we experience it not through eating, but through a not eating. So halachically, we have to eat something, but in order to demonstrate this idea, and Chabad Hasidus in particular is connected to it, because that is Hasidus in essence, is connected to this level of Torah, as we're soon going to see, Be'ezus Hashem. Okay, we're going to leave it over here. And Be'ezus Hashem, tomorrow, in the next class, we're going to learn the next level of Torah, the Torah as it comes down into the civilized element of Torah and the farm element of Torah, Be'ezras Hashem. And then we're going to see how all of this ties into the Parsha, to the Meraglim. Be'ezras Hashem, stay tuned.